You sit down in a dark room, swipe down to refresh your banking app, and stare at a number that makes your stomach drop. You haven't booked a flight, you haven't bought a television, or paid for major car repairs. The money is simply gone, and you cannot recall exactly where it went. What drains most modern accounts is a quiet, relentless death by 1,000 cuts. The damage happens in a highly specific danger zone, purchases sitting right between $10 and $50. It happens through the specialty coffee order, inflated by 3 extra add-ons. It happens when you replace a phone case that works perfectly fine, or when you instantly buy a random lifestyle gadget that pops up in your social media feed. None of these individual transactions are large enough to trip the alarm bells in your head. Because they bypass your rational decision-making process entirely, they feel completely invisible. And invisible spending is the exact kind that steadily hollows out a bank account. When we try to fix this, we usually turn to heavy, rigid systems. We build aggressive spreadsheets with strict spending limits. We divide physical cash into labeled paper envelopes, or download apps that demand we categorize every single transaction we make. We stick to these routines for 2, maybe 3 weeks. Then, almost without noticing, we quietly abandon them entirely. These systems demand a flawless daily commitment. They require you to log entries, check balances, and exert heavy cognitive effort at the exact time of day when you are already exhausted from a busy life. Relying on constant tracking is a losing strategy because it forces you to fight an uphill battle. You are trying to manually operate a tedious, high-maintenance system inside a retail environment explicitly designed for instant, effortless gratification. Instead of tracking every penny, you can replace the entire system with one simple mandate. Anytime you want to buy a non-necessity that costs more than $10, you enforce a strict 10-minute pause. During that pause, you ask yourself one very specific question. Would I still buy this item if I had to hand over physical cash right now out of my own pocket? Behavioral economists use a specific term to describe the obstacles between wanting an item and actually buying it: friction. Today, every major retail platform is scientifically engineered to eradicate friction from your life. They store your credit card details on their servers, they build one-click purchasing buttons on product pages, and they install tap-to-pay terminals at every physical checkout counter. All of this convenience is meant to neutralize a well-documented psychological phenomenon known as the pain of paying. If you have to dig for a wallet, count out bills, and watch cash leave your hands, you experience a mild psychological distress. Retailers remove then steps to eliminate the exact window of hesitation where you might change your mind. The $10 rule works because it acts as a manual friction generator. By forcing a pause and visualizing handing over physical bills, you purposely reintroduce the pain of paying that technology has carefully stripped away. Most budgeting advice tells you to rely on willpower to stop spending, but willpower requires you to actively resist temptation at the exact moment that temptation is at its strongest. That is famously unreliable. This graph plots the biological timeline of a human impulse. When you see an item you want, brain chemistry surges, peaking in the initial 30 seconds. But brain chemistry shifts rapidly. By minute 8 or 9, that manufactured urgency has naturally decayed. Waiting is a completely different mental task than resisting. You do not have to white-knuckle your way through a craving or scold yourself into discipline. You simply delay the action. You wait long enough for your own brain's alarm bell to turn itself off. In practical application, you will likely hit this 10-minute trigger roughly 4 to 6 times a week. Once that manufactured urgency decays, roughly 60% of the time, the urge fades completely and you abandon the purchase. This flowchart tracks how small moments compound. Skipping an average of $15 per abandoned purchase at a 60% success rate accumulates into $300 a month. Extended over 12 months, that 10-minute pause cascades into $3,000 in annual savings. You didn't grind through spreadsheets to secure that money. You kept it by default, simply because you gave an impulse the necessary time to die. To apply this to your own life, set the threshold based on your personal spending habits. If your impulse buys happen at a lower price point, set the trigger at $5. If they skew higher, set it at $20. This habit survives an entire year because it asks almost nothing of you. There is no software to maintain, no ledger to update, and no daily check-in required. If 10 minutes pass and you still genuinely want the item, you buy it. You do so guilt-free, knowing it's a genuine desire rather than a reflex. In a digital economy meticulously engineered by corporations to separate you from your money as quickly and quietly as possible, the most profitable act of financial resistance is a simple 10-minute pause.